Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to this channel. This will be the last live show of the week. We may do some uploads over the weekend that are pre-recorded with some of the headlines. I do have a few headlines pulled up for the weekend, so we'll probably get that up for you guys on the weekend. But we'll be back live on Monday, and today's show is about a film that released in 2018, 2 full years before the lockdowns, the isolation, and everything that was to come. And so you have to ask yourself, was 2/20, which is the date that this released, was it pointing to 2020? And you'll have to be the judge of that as we go through this decode of the film called Level 16. Now, what was this film about? Well, I should have decoded this film a long time ago because many of you were on me about this. And for some reason, I was putting it off, and I finally got to it. And I think the thing that triggered me to decode it was realizing that it came out 2 years before the spamdemic. Yet you're going to see elements in this film that are very eerie, foreshadowing, foreknowledge of events that had not happened yet. So let's go over the plot briefly, and then we'll get into the decode. So the plot is about an all-girls school that is completely enclosed in a single building. They can't go outside, and in fact, they're told that the outside air is toxic. They're given a rigid schedule and harsh rules. And after some time, they begin to realize that something is not right with this school, that it's not a school at all. And they come to the realization that this is some kind of cloning center in which they are subjects. They don't know exactly what they are subjects for at first, then they find it all out. And by the end of it, they realize that they are being harvested for their skin. More specifically, their faces. What do I mean? Well, we'll get into all that. Let's get into this. Now, the girls are told that they are being prepared to be adopted. This is the cover story. To be adopted by the elite families, and that all that matters is their manners, hygiene, and appearance. Well, there's a deeper reason why they put huge emphasis on manners, hygiene, and appearance. It's because their faces will later be used for face transplants. Now, if your mind is already spinning right now, thinking of the ramifications of this as it relates to current events in this world, there's a good reason for it. Because there's a lot of this kind of thing going on. The harvesting of organs, specifically in certain regions of the world that seem to be at the center of the world conflict right now. And all of that ties back into level 16. So, this girl here, she's the main character. One of her friends stops taking her vitamins that they receive every day, and they start asking questions as the effects of the vitamins begin to wear off. Let's watch this here.
And soon I will be chosen, so don't take the vitamins. I'm heel break. Do not take the vitamins.
Vitamins are necessary for healthy growing bodies. Vitamins prevent disease.
So these are the vitamins they're talking about. Let's turn the volume up just a little bit, just to make sure you guys can hear this. And she tells her, don't take the vitamins, don't take the vitamins. And they're programmed. There's a lot of programming going on here, which is exactly how the elite work in our reality. They like to program us with messaging. Usually the messaging isn't so in your face. It's subtle so that they can hide behind the messaging and not be accused of programming us. But here's an extreme example of how they're directly programming these girls to convince them that these vitamins are for their own good. Watch.
Take your vitamin now. Vitamins prevent disease. Take your vitamin now. Necessary for healthy growing bodies. Vitamins prevent disease. Take your vitamin now.
They're blue today. They're blue today. They're blue today.
And of course, the vitamins are blue today. Why? Because this is all about the blue blood, isn't it? We've been talking about this ad nauseum. And I believe at this point, what this blue pill really represents in this film is the gradual transformation of humanity into the blue bloodline. In other words, giving into our serpentine tendencies, which the Bible clearly says we have to fight against. Fighting against sin. Fighting against the unclean. Fighting against the nakash that we are at adversary with within ourselves. Fighting against the copper. Now, in this next scene, they realize that on some nights, that the vitamins that they take are acting as like a sedative to put them out during the night. And on those specific nights, the girls are pulled out of their beds one by one and put on display for final approval for potential buyers.
They're blue today. They're blue today.
Ava. She won't wake up. They never wake up. It's the vitamins. The vitamins keep us healthy. They protect us from unclean air and dirty water. It keeps them asleep. If the door opens, pretend you're in deep sleep.
Now, it's nothing to worry about.
So, then we enter the smack scenes, because there always has to be smack scenes in films that predated the spam-demic, right? That's just because this is the kind of stuff that they're interested in Hollywood. This is just the subject matter that someone just randomly came up with. Of course, I'm being facetious here. But what you're going to hear next is going to blow you away, because the smack scenes are given in conjunction with the vitamins to render the girls docile and unopinionated. They basically become sheep and go along with the whole program, and no alarms go off in their head as to how weird all this is. But then a problem emerges, because the smack scenes start causing the girls to break out in shingles and rashes and having seizures. Does this sound familiar? Watch.
And I will be giving all the students a series of vaccines, just to be safe. Do you understand? I'm afraid there's been an outbreak of fever in one of the other halls. Roll up your sleeves, please. There we go. Okay.
Now look at this syringe, and on it says Denizen. Are you ready for this? Denizen means Dionysus, which is pretty much everything we've been talking about. Who is Dionysus? Well, he's an iteration of the false Messiah, isn't he? Born on December 25th. He's an iteration of Apollo, born on the same day. Sol Invictus, born on the same day. Denis, or Denizen, means son of Dennis or Dionysus. This confirms a lot of the stuff that we have been telling you guys that these people are focused on and who they worship. Let's keep watching.
Little pain. Now, Vivian, do you have any skin problems? Dry spots, pimples?
Sleep scabs?
Sleep scabs. Can you show me?
So they get these, she thinks that they're sleep scabs, but really what they are is probably a result of these injections that they're giving them.
One moment.
The doctor gave me the vaccine. I'm fine.
It looks bad. It's just a vaccine. And the pills are just vitamins.
So notice the blue tile everywhere, a telltale sign. These are the tiles of the serpent. See these tiles in bathrooms and horror movies. We see the same blue tiles in swimming pools and in horror movies and just regular films. Anytime that they want to signify and symbolize the taking of children into places, this is what they depict.
Can I see?
I don't have the fever.
Veronica?
Seizures. I mean, it's everything. I mean, you could pretty much, well, we're not going to say it, but You guys know what you're looking at here.
She's really sick. It's probably the fever. We should call the guards.
She needs water. Grace, can you go get some water?
Ew.
She hasn't done anything wrong.
Well, I don't want to be infected by a virus of ice.
That's right. And the vices of the unclean lead to what?
Hysteria.
Correct.
So they talk a lot about vices and virtues. And I started thinking to myself, what is this really about? This whole talk about vices and virtues. Well, we'll get into that later because it's going to blow you away. Now, in this next scene, the girl is locked into a box as punishment for simply questioning the narrative. That should also ring a bell. And this whole thing screams isolation and quarantine to me before it ever happened. Watch.
When a girl behaves the way you are behaving, I am required to call the guards. Do you understand? I'm going to give you a concentrated vitamin injection.
I don't need that.
What is a girl's first virtue?
We'll let you out in the morning,
Or you can stay here until graduation.
or we can stay here until graduation. Now, graduation in this context means death, and final annihilation is each girl, when they graduate, that just means that their face is going to get taken off and they're going to get killed. So, in effect, this is what the serpent is giving us a choice. Be good, get out of your isolation, or wait until Armageddon.
Spend your time here reflecting on the feminine virtues.
Now, the feminine virtues, wait till you hear this.
Don't let this box be the last thing you see. We're going to be extra careful about your health from now on. Open your mouth.
So, this next scene, the girls go down to the basement. They do escape from their dormitory, and they go down to the basement, and they find the girls with their faces cut off. They're all dead in a morgue, and this prompts them to keep searching.
They cut off her face. Why would they do that?
I don't know and I don't care. I just want to get out of here.
At the Vestalis Clinic.
Now, then this girl finds a promotional video that reveals the entire story. A plastic surgeon working for the Russian mob is breeding DNA-compatible clones for wealthy clients who want full face transplants. In other words, organ harvest. Now, if you're watching this channel for the first time, understand that when my grammar is wrong, it's for a reason, to go around everything. So sometimes I might sound like I'm talking like a third grader, and that's for good reason. It's not because I'm dumb. It's because we're trying to get the word out to as many people as possible. Because if this is the kind of programming that is happening on a regular basis, I think if most people could come to terms with this, then they would stop being manipulated by the programming. This is very, very important work. Now, we know that the harvest of organs is going on. And we know that a lot of this seems to be happening in the UK crane. Weird, right? Considering everything going on over there right now.
Ensuring that our donor material will match your personal DNA. We're offering a unique, cutting-edge synthetic genome therapy at the Vestalis Clinic. At the Vestalis Clinic.
And this is where it goes off the rails, because the name of the clinic is called Vestalis. And I looked it up, and sure enough, this is a reference to the Vestal Virgins of ancient Rome. Every single one of these films is about ancient Rome and sun god and sun worship. Dionysus, Apollo, movies that should have absolutely nothing to do with sun worship and the sun god just continue to get recycled over and over again. And this should reveal to you the false god, the false worship that is going on right under our noses every time we go to the movie theater. So who are the Vestal Virgins? Well, these were basically the first born of some elite people. They were virgins. They were forced to be celibate for 30 years of their life. Then they were trafficked to the elite of the day after their service was over. If they lost their virginity, guess what happened? Or if they failed their duties, guess what happened? They were buried alive inside of the ground or a wall of a building. Literally everything we've been talking about over the past 2 months. Let's watch here. So I went into Wikipedia, and as you can see, everything's footnoted for the naysayers out there. This little footnote, when you click on it, takes you to a source, a reputable source. And it shows the history of this, which was being buried alive. The term is called immurement. They called it the evil field, an underground chamber near the Colleen Gate, supplied with a few days of food and water. And they were buried alive. Now, this only happened about 10 times in recorded history, but there could have been many other times where this happened in terms of breaking the rules.
With full facial rejuvenation, we can help you turn back time with results that are permanent and long-lasting.
So at this point, I was able to unlock the rest of the movie because now we just had an epiphany, right? That this Vestalis clinic was all about the Vestal Virgins. And it appears as though that these virgins in the ancient Rome were used as models of feminine virtue, just like in the movie.
Spend your time in here reflecting on the feminine virtues.
Here it is right here from the Wikipedia page. The Vestals were used as models of female virtue. Again, footnotes. If you go to the article, you click on this number 90, it'll take you to a source, which is probably Encyclopedia Britannica or some other source.
Miss Brixel.
The sponsors do not want to adopt us. All they care about is our skin, and they will take you downstairs and skin you like an animal.
Now, this whole film, of course, was a house lockdown. All of humanity buried alive in their homes in preparation for what was to come 2 years later. Now, for the Vestals, breaking their virtues meant social punishment, which is exactly what would happen and is still happening right now as we speak. We're all on a farm, and the elite are taking their pick of the litter in plain sight with no repercussions for all sorts of various purposes, organs and whatever else that they want. And we just witnessed in plain sight an entire ring of people in a black book that were never even questioned or brought to justice. Hundreds of individuals in a book in contact with a very questionable man with very questionable reasons. And all they kept doing was rolling out more and more drama in the world to get us distracted. They arrested 2 people. One of them is no longer here. The other one will probably wiggle out of the situation as well. Tom can help you out in the chat if you don't know who I'm talking about. We're not even allowed to speak about it. Now, the Vestals also wore white gowns like a virgin.
And skin you like an animal.
This is a farm. And they raise us here like sheep.
So, they would, if they broke their virtues, they would have punishment. They've been raised on a farm. And all of this is happening now. There's the white dresses, just like the Vestals wore as well. Now, listen to this next part, because 2 languages are spoken in the film outside of English, and it confirms the geographic location of where they want us to focus on, which is Russia and Belarus. Watch.
U nas jest jeszcze 2 tych, kto wyżył tut. Отправить фельдшера.
She's speaking Belarusian, and before this, there's actually a guard who speaks Russian.
Хутка, jak wy możecie.
As you can see here in the producer's own words. Now, let's back up here.
This is a farm. And they raise us here like sheep.
Let's back up here, because on your forehead, you see a mark, don't you? And how did this happen? Well, she locked herself in another box, right? And barricaded herself in, which again is a reference to the lockdowns that would happen 2 years later. And she marks herself on the forehead. What? And she did it to ruin her face so that she would have no value anymore to the doctor who is perpetrating all of this. I think we know what this mark really means, don't we? I think we know what it really means. Now, this is all about fear, programming, and compliance.
U nas jest jeszcze 2 tych, kto wyżył tut. Отправить фельдшера. Хутка, jak wy możecie.
Because this place taught me, trained me to be afraid.
This place taught me and trained me to be afraid. And that is what's really happening in real life. Now, let's back up a little bit more and dig a little bit further into these Vestals. Now that we've have the primer to decode this film. So the Vestals were in charge of what's called the sacred fire. Now, a lot of people have different opinions about what that sacred fire is. Some people believe that is the sacred nuclear capability. Who knows? That could be the modern iteration of this, but back in this time, it was a fire that was basically built in the temple. It was not allowed to go out, and the Vestals were in charge of it. Their job was to keep the fire going. Their job was also to keep and observe the state rituals of all kinds. Now, we've seen this fire light up, haven't we? During the Olympics. And when was the deal made between Russia and China? During the Olympics. So, this cult of the Vestals ended in 382 AD. That's when it was pretty much abolished. It was basically defunded, according to this page here. But the Vestals had a lot of power in government, and they were said to have magical powers. Their prayers were said to have stopped runaway slaves in their tracks. Now, what could this mean on a spiritual level? Well, it's kind of like what's happening now, isn't it? Mind control, causing people to stop in their tracks and to do things that they normally wouldn't do because of the mind control. So these Vestals were mind controllers. Now, several very reputable historians state this as fact, that this really happened. And this also happened in the movie, didn't it? Where the girls were so afraid to leave because they were mind control. They were stopped in their tracks, even though they had several chances to escape. But the mind control was too strong. And we saw this mind control on display during VidCo 19. We all had the power to leave. We all had the power to come together and band together to stop what was happening. But we all chose to be paralyzed in fear. Now, according to the ancient story, in one of the years, the Vestals lost their power, according to the written record, and it was blamed on money changers in the temple. Money in union with the sacred chastity. And, you know, it's crazy how they try to overlay the Bible in certain things that they do. They thought that these Vestals gave them special power because of their chastity. But in the forced institution of this chastity, they were breaking all kinds of Jesus laws, weren't they? You don't force someone into this, they have to choose it. So these were attempts to combine church and pagans, to combine Christian beliefs with pagan beliefs. And it just doesn't work with God. You can't serve two masters. Now the Vestals served for 30 years. And then they were married off to elite. And to be a Vestal, you had to be free of mental and physical defects, and preferably a daughter of Rome. So in other words, you had to be a fit sacrifice. The fire that the Vestals tended was used in the households of the citizens of Rome. So people basically come by with a torch, they would light their fire, and then that fire was could be taken back to their home to light all their fire and use their fire. Now, I don't know who in their right mind would want to walk all that distance to go get a fire when you could just crack a couple of rocks together and make your own fire, but this is what was going on. Now, by the end of the Vestal era, there were only 7 Vestals, but that is a holy number. So it was almost like they were trying to recreate something, weren't they? Now, these Vestals also guarded sacred objects as well. They were also responsible for wills and things like that. And they were dignitaries of their time. They showed up to most of these main events. They were even equipped with bodyguards. And they could even pardon prisoners by simply touching them or looking at them. Now, if they let the fire go out, they were punished severely. They were beaten, and if they failed to maintain their chastity, they were buried alive inside of a subterranean chamber. Now, as I said earlier, only 10 Vestals were ever buried alive, and it's said that they were used as scapegoats in times of crisis. Another clue, right? Now, here's where the plot thickens, because everybody knows who Romulus and Remus is. Everybody knows who the she-wolf is, who was the mother that they were weaned off of. Well, apparently, the original mother of Rome, Rhea Silvia, was the first Vestal Virgin. I don't know how that's possible when she weaned Romulus and Remus. But basically, they say in here that she was forced to become a Vestal Virgin, which goes all the way back to the origins of Rome. And when she gave birth to the twins, it was stated that she was merely loaded down with chains and cast into prison, is what it says in here. Now, of course, they were dressed in white garments, just like the girls in the movie were given white dresses. And let's look at some of these historical Vestals, because this is kind of funny, because there's actually a Vestal named Sextilia, and she was put to death for a misconduct in 273 AD. I guess she was destined for failure with a name like Sextilia, right? Anyway, that's what I had on the Vestals. Here's the legendary Vestals here. Rhea Silvia was the very first one, the mythical mother of Rome's founders, Romulus and Remus. And here's Sextilia, put to death for misconduct in 273. Now, let me go back into the chat here. Hope all that went through okay. I didn't even check in with you guys to see if we were still connected. But let's go in here and open up the chat for everyone who wants to look at this. Now, was there anyone else that you had seen that had done a decode on this film, level 16? Was there anything I left out? Anything missing from the decode? Or is all this new information for you guys? Was the Oracle a Vestal? I don't know that, Tanya. All right. So thanks to the people that asked me to decode this. I'm sorry it took so long. I thought that the movie came out after the lockdown, so that's where I got confused. I like to cover the foreshadowing and foreknowledge and programming rather than a lot of the after the fact movies, because there's lots and lots and lots of after the fact movies, aren't there? And those are effective in certain ways, but really what you need to do is find the movies where they were already programming you for an event that had not happened yet. Those are the most powerful ones. Tradition continues today with beauty pageants. Winners were sacrificed today, but then got a trophy for their display of vanity. Exactly. Now, over the weekend, I've got some stories pulled up. There was a group, Saucy Side, in which 4 people jumped from a building all together. So there's more people jumping out of buildings. We also have Rusia coming forward with accusations and more proof about these biolabs. We also will have an interview with a Chakfecker. Lots to cover on the weekend. We'll just record it and premiere it for you guys. And this goes on and on. We're going to get a little bit into iodine, a little bit more, which is used for radiation sickness, because we had decoded iodine, hadn't we? When did we decode that? We decoded that when we were decoding the word yod. And we saw that it was related to iodine and Yoda. Then we had, so we'll get into all that over the weekend. I don't want to give it all away yet, because I gotta put it all together for you guys. Let's go back into the chat here. All right. Thanks, Jesus Saves. Jesus Saves says, I share your videos. I really appreciate that. Watch Wag the Dog goes good with the fake war going on. Who is checking the Chakfeckers? Good question. Potassium is purple. Kelp is good for you. Now, the interesting thing about iodine is the largest source of iodine is in the ocean. Did you know that blue-blooded creatures, hemocyanin-based creatures, are very high in iodine? Kind of fits in everything, doesn't it? Squid, octopus, shellfish, all very high in iodine. Now, why would that protect someone from radiation? I don't know the answer to that, but we're going to try to break that down. Kelp, exactly, kelp. Now, the reason why those types of fish and crustaceans are high in iodine is, of course, because they live in the ocean, which is full of iodine. This is why it can be toxic if you drink seawater, as well as becoming dehydrated. So, all right. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for showing up today. It's Friday. Bathing in the ocean is healthy. Yes, it is healthy for your skin and things like that. The salt. All right. Iodine soaks up free radicals. Thanks, Alfredo. Fills the thyroid gland. Isotopes. Thanks, Amanda. Thanks, Tanya. Your thyroid is iodine, and there are tons with thyroid problems. Yes, lots of thyroid problems going on right now, aren't there? Wow, they had it in the 100, they had to change their blood for radiation. Yeah, there's something to this, isn't there? Are the blue bloods going to be more resistant? Do they have higher levels of iodine? I'll research all that. I'll look it up. There might be studies on this about people that have naturally high levels of iodine in their body, or maybe people who eat a lot of shellfish have higher levels of iodine. Who knows? Who knows? I mean, you could go anywhere with this. Aren't blue bloods inbred? Well, I think what has happened, and based on our research, is that certain bloodlines have married within their own bloodline to maximize and intensify their blue blood roots. And that's where you get into some of these, abilities that they have. And so that's about all we've figured out up to this point. I add some iodine to my skin and let what's needed absorb. Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, a lot of people can't eat shellfish. They're allergic to it. I know my mother is. She can't come within 20 feet of a shrimp. She loves shrimp, but she'll break out in hives and stuff. And rashes and things. Even just touching it. Yes, Yoda was a conjured demon. You're absolutely right. They made an adorable demon is what they pretty much did. We're also going to talk about the Jed, which is the raising of the Jed. What many people don't realize is that this was an ancient pillar in Egypt. And it looks a lot like a lightsaber, doesn't it? And for good reason. Because they had this ceremony called the raising of the Jed. And it was a lot like Luke Skywalker, the Jedi, raising his X-Wing fighter out of the swamp. You see, George Lucas basically wrote much of Star Wars after the Bible. Yoda was the Yod, which is the outstretched arm. It is the word used, or the letter it used, to demonstrate the act of doing something. And this is why these Jedis would always raise their hands out to move objects with their mind. So, everything goes back to ancient Egypt and ancient Rome, which conquered Egypt, of course. But they would raise this column. This is crazy, you guys. Crazy. Now, what else was this Jed? Well, this represented the sacrum of the bull, is what the Jed represented. And the Ankh represented the thoracic vertebrae of the bull. These people worship the spine of a bull, as well as the nervous system, the spinal cord, which they likened to a serpent. And they would try to raise the serpent up through the spinal column out of its prison to wield it with the mind. And this is why they carried a serpent on their forehead. Here is the Ankh, thoracic vertebrae, and the Jed, the base of the sacrum of the bull's spine. And visually, they actually kind of look like parts of the spine. So, good question, whoever asked that. Yoda. All right. Okay, I'm just in the chat here. Now, many people believe that the ancient Egyptians basically acquired some of the secret knowledge of heaven in order to levitate objects and slice through solid stone. Those are two things that would be necessary to build the pyramids, wouldn't they? You would have to have the ability to levitate heavy objects with anti-gravitics, as well as slice through solid stone. And the theory is that they used sound technology. That somehow when they would utter these prayers, utter these spells, that it would, at some kind of frequency, that it would cause stone to shatter. It would cause stone to levitate at other frequencies, and you could cut through stone with a third frequency. Now, the Bible talks about some of this kind of technology used around the wall of Jericho. God told them to blow their trumpets. Now, there's two ways to look at that. It either happened supernaturally, and the act of blowing the trumpet was an act of faith, and then God brought down the walls, or God knew the frequency of the trumpet that they were blowing, and knew that it would be the precise frequency, and he instructed them to do it because he's God and he knows. And that's what brought down the walls. Either way, it was supernatural, right? How else do you explain the construction of the pyramids? There are many, many theories, but all of them fall flat with the technology of the day, unless you think of high ancient technology, which was learned by the fallen angels. Okay? And this is why I never rule out some of these technologies in modern warfare, as well as modern events that happen, like the airplane from China that, drove straight into the ground at supersonic speed, or buildings that fall in their footprints faster than free fall. These are ancient technologies taught by the fallen angels. They could never disclose that to us, because if they did disclose that to us, then we would know that the world is run by fallen angels, right? Yes, giants helped build the pyramids. That was another part of it. But that still doesn't explain cutting through solid stone. Now, even the cutting of stone and the levitation of stone is in the Bible. There are two words. I can't think of them off the top of my head. But there are two words that are used to describe that. Oh, light and perfection is what they're translated from in the Old Testament. Or translated to. Light and perfection. And I think the word is, what is the name of that actress that's in Kill Bill? Gosh, there's so much to remember, you guys. I wish I could just pull things out of my brain like a library, but it doesn't work that way. Who was in Kill Bill? Somebody help me out of here. The girl with the sword. They could cut through anything, by the way. Remember that? She has like a super sharp sword. Uma Thurman. Thanks, Tom. So, her name actually means light and perfection. Let me show you. Here she is here. And it says here that she was named after these stones. They were actually like these crystals, which goes all the way back to lightsabers as well, right? Lightsabers are made with crystals. Early family life. Let's see if we can figure this out. They might have removed it from Wikipedia. They like to do that sometimes. She had a Buddhist upbringing. And let's see if they mentioned it. At one time, they had mentioned her name and why she was named this way, but they might have taken it out. Let's go down here. Okay, they're not going to show it here. Let's try to Google it. Now, all this needs to be talked about and discussed, because this is all this stuff fits together, doesn't it? And you have to see the big picture of what these people are focused on and what they're programming us into. Light and perfection. They're not going to show it here. Urim, let's just look it up. Urim. Okay, here we go. So, as you can see, Urim and Thummim looks like Uma Thurman, doesn't it? And light and perfection. Now, this is right out of the Bible. Exodus 28:30. The Urim and the Thummim first appeared. They were named for inclusion on the breastplate worn by Aaron. So these were like crystals on the breastplate of the high priest in the Old Testament. Urim has been taken to derive from a root meaning lights. Now they call this, they say this is divination, but when it's coming from God and he's telling you to do it, it's not divination. The very definition of divination is worshiping a god other than God and using their magic instead of God in what he's ordering you to do. So it's really not divination, but they call it that because God instructed these priests to do this. Lights and perfection. Now, if you dig deeper into this rabbit hole, you'll realize that some believe, based on these words, that one of these could levitate the stone and the other could cut it. Now, there is apocryphal evidence in books such as the Kebra Nagast out of Ethiopia that seem to confirm some of this. Because when the prince of Ethiopia returned from King Solomon, God instructed him to steal the Ark of the Covenant. This is out of the Kebra Nagast. So as he was going through Egypt on his way back from Jerusalem, he laid waste to all the false idols. Now, it is apparent when you go to Egypt that a cataclysm happened. I watch some channels that talk a lot about these cataclysms, and they go to some of these ancient places, but they ignore some of the apocryphal texts that seem to explain what happened to these ruins and how these huge, massive, multi-ton stones were overturned. Like, nothing can really do that. Wind can't do it. You would really need some kind of, like, explosion of some kind. Well, the Kebra Nagast explains it. It says that when Menelik returned from seeing his father Solomon, which was a union between the Queen of Sheba and Solomon, that he laid waste to Egypt and the false idols there. And he did it with the help of the Ark of the Covenant, but also what it explains, really close to that story, is that the caravan that was led out of Jerusalem was levitating over the top of the ground. It wasn't even touching the ground. Light and perfection. Now, of course, some of these are theories. Others have some basis in history, and you'll just have to decide for yourself. But this explains a lot of things, doesn't it? It explains how these megalithic structures were built, possibly, and how and why they were built, and so on and so forth. All right, let's go back into the chat here. That's a little history lesson on some things that we've studied in the past. Now, it's apparent as well as in the Old Testament that because of the weight of the Ark of the Covenant and it's what it was encased in, which was solid gold, not solid gold, it was plated with gold. Think of the weight of this thing. And it was carried for hundreds of miles by, 2 or 4 people. It sounds to me like it could have been anti-gravitic as well. It could have been floating as well. So, interesting, right? With the 10 Commandments inside. All right, so someone had a question. What's Mike's question? Okay. Oh, wow, that's a good scripture, Tom. Tom says, and they departed from the Mount of the Lord 3 days journey. The Ark of the Covenant of the Lord went before them in the 3 days journey to search out a resting place for them. So obviously it was floating by itself. Great scripture, Tom. Thank you for that. Now, of course, you could surmise that that was supernatural and that God did that. But then when you take all the other evidence as well, you know, there's something, this could have been a technology is what I'm saying. I don't want to take anything away from God's power and then he just could snap a finger and have something levitate. But it appears as though some of this technology was given to man to wield. And some used it for good and some used it for evil. All right. I poured out like water and all my bones are out of joint. All right, you guys, I'm going to let you go. I've been talking enough today. I hope you guys all have a great weekend and I hope the weather's great and you can get out and get some exercise and breathe some fresh air. Maybe go to a park and just, say a prayer. I like to go outside when I talk to the Lord. And so these are things you can do as well. I love each and every one of you guys. Have a great day. Take care and be safe.